Well, hi, I am Tim Pratt. My title here is the administrator of the Hennepin Recycling Group. So a little background. The cities of Brooklyn Center, Crystal, and New Hope formed a joint powers agreement called the Hennepin Recycling Group way back in, I think it was the late 80s, 89, to administer what was then, what the county was saying, all the cities had to have startup recycling programs. And so all three cities decided to join forces. And the original administrator was an employee of the city of Crystal, and when she left, then HRG contracted with the city of Brooklyn Park to administer the joint powers agreement. And I have been the recycling manager for the city of Brooklyn Park since 2015, and thus the administrator for the Hennepin Recycling Group during that time as well. Which is nice because then we can combine the work of all four cities, and it pays off in some ways, which we'll show you. But what we do is the program components. The main part is the curbside recycling collection portion of that. It's for residents only and for buildings of 8 units or fewer. So not the larger apartment buildings, but there is actually one 8-unit building in the city, as well as a bunch of fewer buildings. As well as the education aspects of that. We do have staff that answers phone calls from residents, as well as the annual mailers that we put out in this annual guide. We have the bulky waste curbside collection program, which we had this spring. We have every 2 years. So in the even-numbered years, we're in Crystal and New Hope. Odd years, we're in Brooklyn Center. We have the special material drop-off day, which we just had this past Saturday. We have a free yard waste drop-off site for residents up at the Maple Grove yard waste site. And we also have resources available for various event recycling. So I've got event recycling containers that you can borrow up at our facility in Brooklyn Park, but any resident is eligible to come pick them up and use them. And we can also help with recycling at the Crystal Frolics. We've had some conversations about expanding what we do there and potentially offering organics recycling there. So once we can have large group events, we can have those conversations again. Now I did notice on the Facebook page there was a resident that commented on Mike's post about that the resident had a question about what happens to your recycling. And so that came in after I put the PowerPoint together. But a good question. Because a lot of folks have seen the news about China severely limiting the amount of recycling that they are accepting. Well, in Minnesota, everything that is collected for recycling cannot go in the garbage. That is a state law. And if you didn't have a market available and couldn't store the material, you could apply to the MPCA for a waiver to that law. And in some parts of the country, for instance, Philadelphia and parts of Oregon, those states, they did ask to be able to, in Philadelphia's case, incinerate the recycling. In Oregon, they asked to landfill it, and those waivers were granted. Here in Minnesota, no company has asked for a waiver to be able to dispose of the recycling because we're not as dependent on shipping the material to China as those other markets are. There are robust end markets for nearly all your recyclables here in Minnesota and for all of them in the upper Midwest. And in fact, Waste Management, the company that we contract with for the curbside collection, has been actively moving to developing domestic markets for their end products. And they started doing that after the last time that China put in a prohibition about bringing in recycling. Because this last one, this one that started about a year and a half ago, is a little bit more severe in that it's, in terms of the limits on what they allow in, allowing almost nothing in terms of the recycling. So the previous attempt lasted for only a few months, and then went away, but Waste Management saw the writing on the wall. They're now up to between 80 and 90% of the recycling that they collect in all of the United States goes to markets in North America, and primarily in the United States. It just makes financial sense for them to develop long-term markets here in the United States as well, so not being dependent upon another company or another country. So rest assured, there are markets. They still want your recycling, and they provide abundant manufacturing jobs here in the United States. So here I mentioned the special materials drop-off, which we had on Saturday. We was busy because we canceled the spring one. And Hennepin County has put some restrictions on what they accept at the drop-off facility up in Brooklyn Park, in that they're not accepting items that would require a two-person lift. So they're not taking mattresses, not taking large appliances, and they are not taking any televisions or things over more than 50 pounds. So there was some pent-up demand, and so at the drop-off day we were taking mattresses. The size of the electronics did not matter, and we were certainly taking large appliances. So we had about 1,350 vehicles come through during the day. In past falls, we averaged about between 1,000 and 1,100 vehicles. We had 126 vehicles come through from the city of Crystal. But being that it just happened Saturday, I don't have final numbers from any of the vendors on what the breakdown of material was. So the other thing we do is the free yard waste drop-off site. We do have a contract through 2022 with the Maple Grove Yard Waste site, which is at the corner of 610 and Maple Grove Parkway. Now there's some concern that that is a potentially developable property, but it is kind of wetlands around the site. We had some conversations with the owners this spring because one of the founders passed away last November. So in this transition, we had some conversations with them. They said they have not received any offers to try and buy them out to redevelop that land, but they also operate Lindy Greenhouses, which is based in Maple Grove as well, and they said, we are very active in our community, and we have made a commitment to the city of Maple Grove that if we get an offer we can't refuse on this property, that we will relocate the yard waste site somewhere, preferably in Maple Grove, but very close to Maple Grove, if not available site in the city. So that gave us some sigh of relief there and some comfort in the long run.
Do they own a lot of the land over there?
So if you look at this this aerial picture, they own not only this triangle, so the street that's going up is Maple Grove Parkway, at the bottom is 610, and that's 81 that kind of forms the top of the triangle. They own everything inside that triangle, as well as the land that goes up and off to the north there. But again, that's a lot of wetland, and there's also a power line going through there. So that portion is less desirable for development. But could they convert that into something? I don't know. I mean, they certainly have not ventured to try and expand the yard waste site into that territory, so I don't know what they might do with that. Oops. Okay. Another thing we offer is the pumpkin drop-off, so that's going to be coming up here the week after Halloween. So you can come and drop off your pumpkins, and we'll have a roll-off up there in the parking lot in Central Park on the Noble Avenue side of Central Park in Brooklyn Park. And it's kind of fun to see everyone's artwork I get to check all of that out. And then we
have pumpkins that are left after the squirrels get to them?
Well, as you can probably see, some of those have been squirrel chewed, but And then we compost them at our environmental area and use that for various projects. I mean, it's not a lot of pumpkins, but it is a nice opportunity to remind folks of the value of composting and to get these pumpkins out of the trash. We also were a collection site for the Rain Barrel Compost Bin sale that was offered. So the Recycling Association of Minnesota holds the sale. They have all the mechanics on their website where you can go and order, and then they come pick them up at the Brooklyn Park Operations and Maintenance Facility. In fact, Brecca came and picked up a Rain Barrel from us.
Yeah, I have 2 of the compost bins. They're awesome.
Okay. So this was just a few weeks after the lockdown, but we were able to institute some distancing procedures with our staff, and since it was outside, we were able to hold this. It was the first Saturday in May, but we sold out 150 rain barrels. Oh no, it was it was about 150 rain barrels and 150 compost bins that we sold out. This is the second year in a row that we've done this. Now, a big thing, of course, is the curbside bulky waste collection. You can see there is one of the yards where folks have put out an abundant amount of stuff. Not everyone is quite like that, but if you look at the 2 charts I put on here, you'll see Brooklyn Center just restarted their curbside collection in 2017. So that's that little dip trough there. And then it stayed low because we had the snowstorm in 2018 here in Crystal New Hope. But you can see the trend line is that it's going up, as well as the cost per household for the program, because so much material is getting put out there, and the cost of disposal is going up. Hennepin County has raised their tipping fee at the transfer station in Brooklyn Park twice in the last 5 years. And the Great River Energy facility on the river has closed, that processed bulky waste, and now we're having to ship that down to landfill in the waste management landfill down in Bloomington. So we're incurring some additional costs with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Another thing we wanted to note, the simple recycling, which had the clothes and textiles recycling, pulled out of the entire Minnesota market because they just were not getting enough material to make it financially viable for them. I mean, they weren't even close for whatever reasons. Minnesotans just were not giving them enough material. So next, so what's on the horizon? We are working with a company called Recollect on both a mobile app and website. They specialize in some various facets of recycling communications. One of the nice things will be this notification of Recycling Week. So, for instance, I live in the city of Shoreview, which has this app, and I get email notification I'm in the Monday zone, so every Sunday I get an email or a text that says, hey, it's Recycling Week. Especially when it's every other week collection, we get a lot of calls from folks, oh, my recycling was missed. Well, no, actually, it's not your week. Oh, I didn't get picked up last week, so I thought I was off a week, and now I've got a full container. So this will kind of help with that. There's also a database that you can go in. I've got item X. What do I do with it? Is it recyclable or is it not? And then there's a database on where to dispose of the items that you can't put in your recycling cart. So we're going through, it's been approved in the HRG budget, but we're looking to partner and thus share the costs with the City of Brooklyn Park. So we're still working through the budget process with Brooklyn Park, but we expect that they will, because we've gotten every indication that they will. And then we will develop and launch this sometime in 2021. Now the big thing that everyone's been wondering about, the organics. So yes, Hennepin County revised their Ordinance 13 at the end of 2018 that requires cities to provide residents the opportunity to recycle organics curbside. Does not require the city to contract for that service, as we do as we contract for bottles and cans and paper recycling, just that residents have that opportunity. And then there's also about increasing awareness. So we have been I've been putting out more information about organics recycling, what it is and the benefits, as well as the county. So what are organics? Basically food scraps and certain non-recyclable papers. And this is the list that comes off the City of Minneapolis website. I'm not going to bore you by reading all of that. And why organics? Well, when we look at what's still in our trash, organics is the single largest category that's still there, and it's recoverable, and it can be composted, and so we should be looking at organics as a resource rather than a burden, and so we should be looking for how to capture that. So how are we going to proceed with meeting Hennepin County's updated Ordinance 13? The HRG board proposed, and all 3 city councils have agreed, that rather than entering into an HRG-wide contract for the service, that we would instead require garbage haulers to offer organics recycling, much as they are currently required to offer yard waste collection. It's an opt-in service, and that you would pay additional for. That's going to require updates to city codes, not here in Crystal, because you folks updated your codes just a couple of years ago, but certainly in Brooklyn Center and New Hope. In fact, Monday night I'm meeting with the New Hope City Council to talk about this. But it will require updates to the hauler licensing applications, and this stuff all needs to be in place so that anyone who has a license on January 1, 2022 is offering organics recycling to its customers. The board has also proposed splitting the cost for the first year of service up to $100 per household, and we will use grant funding from Hennepin County to pay for that split. Right. And currently there are about 50 Crystal households that have the organics recycling service with a private hauler. So that's the end of my presentation. If there are questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Is there a market for the organics? What happens to
Yes. Okay. So organics are typically composted, which means that they're mixed with that organic matter is typically called what's called a green. They're mixed with a brown, which is, a lot of times is leaves, so that you get your carbon and nitrogen mixed together, and then they're composted. We put in big windrows and allowed to decompose. And that finished compost is in demand because it's like vitamin-enriched dirt. And so it's used by landscapers, and it's in the DOT specs that it can be used in road projects. And it's really nice because it is much better at preventing erosion than your typical straw bales and other methods that are used. And it also, the plants that grow out of that material are hardier, and and they establish themselves faster. So yes, there are markets for that. There is limited composting site availability. There are only 2 sites in the Twin Cities area. One at the Shakopee, Midwauket, and Sioux facility. There's another down in Empire Township in Dakota County. And they have both in the past few years have been working on plans to expand because they're near capacity. So that's where the bottleneck is. Sure, there could be some more work at end market development. So Hennepin County has actually been trying to find a company to come in and run an anaerobic digestion facility. That's where you take that organic material and allow it to decompose in the absence of oxygen anaerobically, where it gives off methane. Methane is captured and can then be converted into fuel, like a liquefied natural gas. And then it decreases the volume of the material, and that digestate, as it's called, can then be composted afterward, but you significantly reduce the volume. So then the bottleneck of not having enough composting facility room, that eases that. But they have not found a company willing to come in and do that, at least not at this time. So, a lot of...
The answer to a lot of things that I think you hit on last time, that you kind of gave a little update on, so it was good.
Okay.
That anaerobic stuff. Nobody bid on it yet, huh?
Yeah, well, part of it is that Hennepin County would like a company to come in and build the facility and run the facility itself and assume all the risk. And I think that any wise company would like to share the risk.
Yeah, that would kind of.
So,
One of the slides with the curbside pickup that they do every year, I mean, it does look like it's increasing. Is it always going to be a given that will occur, or is there a certain point where it's going to be too much and something else is going to have to happen?
well, I mean, what cost can the residents bear? So the the contract for the program expires after next year's collection in Brooklyn Center. So we'll go out for bids again after that, and we'll see. But I have, in the presentation I'm giving Monday night to the New Hope City Council, and this shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and I'm telling them to be prepared for a rate increase in 2022. And then our curbside residential recycling collection contract ends in June 30, 2023. Now we have the best contract in the entire state by far. And Waste Management reminds me every time that they can that they are underwater on this contract.
Oh, yeah.
So again, I'm letting the New Hope City Council know that they should expect another rate increase proposal for 2024. So what would, how much will we have to increase to cover the increased costs of disposal of material for the bulky curbside waste collection program? I don't know. And I would say that both the city of Bloomington and the city of Brooklyn Park, which are the only two other cities that offer this type of program, both instituted load limits, limiting the amount of material that people could put out at the curb in an effort to control those costs.
Does do the people that go around and scavenge, do they hurt or help the curbside program?
Well, a little of each.
Because they're scavenging the stuff that's valuable.
Yeah, mostly it's a help, because yes, they are removing stuff that we don't have to collect and dispose of, and they're reusing it, and so that's a benefit, both societally and environmentally. The only down part is that they're not always courteous in how they deal with the stuff that they're not going to take with them.
Yeah.
So sometimes they leave behind a mess that our guys have to clean up, and we.
You
Yeah.
can definitely tell.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, do you think there'd ever be a time that we wouldn't get contractors who would be interested in the curbside pickup?
Yes, it's entirely possible, because it requires like rear loading garbage trucks, and companies are switching their fleets over to the automated side loaders. It's safer for their workers. It speeds their collection time to have stuff carted and collected, automated. So, for instance, in the city of Brooklyn Park, the collection there had been on 2 Saturdays, and the city's divided into 3 zones, and they only do 1 zone a year. And they'd taken those zones and divided into 2, but the contractor, Republic Services, had retired some of those rear-loading trucks, so now they've switched it over to 3 Saturdays in order to be able to handle that same number of homes, but with fewer trucks. So yeah, there is the potential at some point in the future that there just is no company with the equipment to be able to do that.
So if that were, when that happens, would there be the ability to have like another bulk day at one of the sites where people can bring their stuff?
Yeah, it's possible. I've done that in previous. I used to work for the city of Roseville, and that's where we had a drop-off day where folks brought in their trash, as opposed to the special materials drop-off day that we have, which is just for hard-to-recycle items. If we pushed through 1,354 vehicles just with recyclables, if we offered trash too, I'd be there next month, still dealing with the same line. So yes, the potential is, especially on a smaller scale, that we could offer something like that, and I've got experience doing that. We'll have to look at that, but the thing about the curbside collection is that it allows for seniors and folks who might have mobility issues or transportation issues to get rid of their stuff. And if you have to transport it, then that becomes a burden on those folks.